Professional Development Series, a series of webinars that we're doing to provide more tools and resources to our members and non-members throughout the province, and even in some cases Western Canada. We today the webinar presentation will be done by myself and Colleen Bond, and we also have John Powell. John was unfortunately able to attend in person, so we have done a recording with John, and we'll play that when we get to that portion of the presentation. If at any times you have any questions about what we're presenting, feel free to type it into the chat. We have Ashley on here as well, and we'll be monitoring the chat. So we'll do our best to answer those questions either at the time or later on in the presentation as we go through. So again, my name is Dale Wielden. I'm President CEO for the BC Economic Development Association. I have done economic development since, I guess, since 1991. So a number of years. Started off in a small rural community here in British Columbia, and then in a larger center in the Lower Mainland for 7 years, and then took over the association. We do a lot of training either here in British Columbia or across North America. And I'm also happy to work with Colleen. Colleen, why don't you just give a little bit of background about yourself as well?
Yeah, I've been in economic development since I think just a few years after you, Dale, 95 or 96, here in the central Okanagan. So we had Kelowna and Lake Country, Peachland, a few other communities, West Bank First Nation. So we were regional government. And then I've just been working for the past 13 or 14, no, I guess 15 years now, actually. Dale, with you on other aspects of economic development, and investment readiness is certainly one of the ones that we've been talking about.
Great, thanks very much. And sorry about the choking on the coffee. So, yes, and John Watson's comment. Thanks, John. Dale supported the first marine industry project, Noah's Ark. So there you go. So anyways, we're happy to have you all here. This next slide is just all of the different workshops that we're doing. If you missed yesterday's workshop on economic development statistics, Ashley, I believe people can download or can actually watch that recording soon on the website, correct?
Definitely, I'll share a link in the chat.
Great, thank you. All right, so we're going to start off with the relationship between investment and economic development. And, you know, in the past, Colleen, investment attraction, if we will, and economic development, it always used to be that economic developers' primary focus was to attract new industry to their communities. And it's kind of changed over the years, and rightfully so. It's we need to build from within. We need to work with our existing businesses. We need to do, you know, more things to build our community, and then the investors will look at it, you know, hopefully more favorably. And we use those assets and those resources that we've developed by working with our existing industry to be able to attract new types of investment. And investment is not just in industrial plant. Investment can be, in today's world of economic development, you know, investment can be housing, it can be, you know, healthcare facilities, it can be you know, industrial parks for sure, it can be small commercial industries, it can be entrepreneurship, it could be attracting a small you know, immigrant entrepreneur to your community. So investment carries a lot of different meanings now than what it used to be in economic development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with when we looked at it before, Dale, it was certainly investment from the outside, that foreign direct investment, but that's certainly not the case. And you've given some really good examples of what other type of investment is really important for your community.
Sure.
It's also really important once you start to look at what you want to do with regards to attracting investment, again, whether it's growing what you have, getting investment in your existing companies, looking to attract from the outside, because that is definitely still a key part of it. There's no doubt about that. But you can't just kind of go into it without a plan. You really have to have a good understanding of what your community is, what your community can offer, not only your community, but a little bit broader based, looking at the region around you, and what are those industries that sort of will define what would be the best prospects for your community and your region, and making sure that you've got some sort of strategy that is going to target these companies, these different types of investments for your community, that you've got the capacity. That is a huge one for sure. I will talk about that a little bit more. There is definitely that need for speed. When people are looking to put investment into a community, they really want to have information on your community as fast as possible. And that's really in that 24 to 48 hours at the most. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that importance of a website presence, because that does answer some of the questions immediately for investment inquiries. We're going to talk a little bit more about marketing and what that looks like. And one thing we really do want to stress, and this isn't just because of investment, that maintain confidentiality is one of the key components of successful economic development. And unfortunately, we've seen over the years communities who break that confidentiality on investments coming in to the community, that investment goes somewhere else now, because that confidentiality is so key to making sure that your investment starts from day one all the way through to closing. And then I think it's a good point there at the bottom, talking about the smaller communities. You as EDO will be responsible for pretty much every single aspect of investment attraction. Some of the larger communities, of course, will have designated people who can focus on whether it's geographic sectors or whether it's industry sectors. But in smaller communities, you are going to have to be everything to everyone.
I think, Colleen, that one of the, you talked about the need for speed, and that was really something that we had, and it hasn't changed. Investors are looking at, even when we were doing it and we were attracting industries to our communities, the larger companies in particular, it was they literally dictated to you when they need their answers by. It's 48 hours, 24 hours. We need this by tomorrow afternoon at 4. We're evaluating a number of communities. So that speed aspect remains, or was there then, and it's still there now. The industry doesn't want to wait for the information. And then when you get approval, they don't want to wait for all of the approvals that need to take place. There's got to be sort of that fast track process even built into how are you allowing these projects to proceed in your communities. And of course, you want them to be done right, so you need to take that into consideration. But can you move things up in the pecking order as far as the approvals go? And then, of course, on that maintaining confidentiality, you're right on. I mean, that will kill projects. You've seen it kill projects. I've seen it kill projects. And I think it's really important with municipal elections coming up, that that elected officials also understand, I think economic development training for elected officials is really important, and I think they need to understand that we can't have on our council agendas reports that identify company names. We can maybe identify sectors, or we can, depending on how big that sector might be in your community. But there's things that we need to do to make sure that the information provided to us by the company is not leaked out to the general public, and then to, of course, the competitors of those particular companies. So that regional collaboration is also a really important part of how investment comes to the community. Yesterday we were talking about statistics, and it's great to look at your own statistics in your community, but you need to sort of look regionally. And you do that through partnerships, and you need to, you need to be able to compare regionally, but you also need to use the information from a regional basis in your fight and in your drive to encourage new investment in the community. It creates a much stronger voice for a project. Your population is bigger than just your municipal boundaries. It creates a larger pool of resources that neighboring communities are sharing. I think, a good example of that might be the South Island Prosperity, Colleen, where, a number of communities are paying into one particular program and sharing the resources to either attract investment, drive investment, be it from within or outside of the community. Leveraging, of course, resources, not only financial resources, but human resources too. It's hard sometimes to take everything on yourself. There's been great examples of economic development programs where communities have all pulled together to encourage economic development, be it in an official partnership like South Island Prosperity, or sort of a community to community sort of broader partnership like Imagine Kootenays, and we'll talk about that, or maybe the Comox partnership, where it used to be that all the communities would work together on economic development, but it's again sharing the human resources as well as financial. The external respect. Funding agencies actually look at regional partnerships and regional collaboration better than they will at individual communities. So when you're able to pull in, whether you're pulling in, the local government and the neighboring Indigenous communities together, you have a much better chance of getting funding approvals from those external agencies if you do that. Increased coordination and communication, obviously, the populations and the assets. One community might have a hospital and the other might not. One community might have an airport and the other one doesn't. I remember when we worked in Chilliwack, we used to talk about the number of airports that we had in the community, and realistically, those airports were right from YVR all the way up to Abbotsford, including and Chilliwack. So, we had a number of airports and healthcare facilities in the community. And everyone's a winner. If we're working together in collaboration, not maybe everything, but everybody is a winner. I can remember, Colleen, when you and I first started, I think probably when we first met, there was a program that we used to run called Links BC, and Links BC brought communities together from around the province, about 11 communities. Those communities worked together to attract call centers to the community, or to the province. And when one of us had a success in attracting, we didn't compete against each other. We gave our information. When one of us would win, all of us would celebrate. And it's so important to recognize, because we all felt like we were winners, because that would lead to another one wanting to invest in the province. So anything else on there, Colleen?
No, let's take a look at the next slide. I think that's Jim's sort of exercise that he did, Jim out of Venture Kamloops. When we think about the different collaborations or the partners that we do have, we sometimes limit ourselves just to thinking it's the community next door to us, or it's our workforce agencies, and it's much more than that. We can't get to that slide, Dale, or?
Sure. Yep. Sure.
Oh.
There you go.
Anyway, so yeah, okay, so perfect. So here you see it. So Venture Kamloops thought to sit down and actually find out who all of their relationships are that they have. And as you can see, we've got some of those ones that instantly come to mind, your universities, as I said, the surrounding communities, the ministries. But as they start to look further and further out, they saw way more expanded opportunities for them because of a partnership that they had with somebody. They had another one. So, a good example of that is the Kamloops Innovation Center. They have a great partnership with them. But the Innovation Center has a really good partnership with the European Chamber of Commerce. So again, that makes them a partner in some way. So it's a good exercise that I think, communities could sit down and kind of go, really, what are who are our relationships, who are our partners, whether potential or real, and really look at that and what that looks like for the community. I think we'd be very surprised at how deep our partnerships are.
So then the big question is that we always have to ask ourselves, are we ready? Right? As individuals, as individual communities, are you ready to attract that next investment? Are you ready to support even an existing company who might have that opportunity for expansion? And it's great to think that we are, we have the bylaws in place, or we have the policies in place, but really, are we ready? There's so much more that goes into it to be able to respond to any type of inquiry that might come through the door. There's 40,000 economic development organizations throughout North America, whether that is local government economic development organizations, Indigenous governments, regional governments. It can be, in some cases, the utilities. In the US, a lot of utilities are into the economic development program, and they're all chasing that relocation. There's 200 relocations a year or expansions that maybe they're going to add a second facility. But the reality is one of those businesses could be your business. So if you're not looking after your own businesses, then you have a risk of that being one of the 200 that's going to go elsewhere. Don't think your local companies are not being considered. If you have a successful business in your community, another community wants it. And so you need to make sure that you're prepared for, you really are ready for that investment to be there. And that, again, you're working with the businesses that already are in your communities. Colleen?
Yeah, and this is a great tool. Some of you may be aware of it, maybe some of you aren't, but an investment readiness assessment. And this can be off of BCEDA's website. I believe the province has it somewhere on one of their, through the ministry there. But it's a really, really good exercise for any community to undertake, to really find out, how ready are you for investment? Dale said a few minutes ago about that assumption that we as communities may make, that we are ready for investment and the attraction of that, when we're not, perhaps. And this assessment really does walk a community through it by exploring different aspects of what you need to be investment ready, and it really does confirm that you've got that capacity, that you are able to expand, or sorry, to respond to the inquiries, and really shows where those gaps exist for investment readiness. And it's a great exercise, and I would encourage any and every community to do it if you haven't, and honestly, if you already have done it, to do it again and find out where you are. Have you improved? Have you filled any of those gaps that maybe you found a year ago when you did it, or 2 years ago? So it's a great tool that, again, we just really encourage communities to use.
Yeah, and Colleen, there's a question in the chat that just came in that says, with more business being conducted online, is there still as many businesses looking to expand into other areas, or just hiring people in our areas to work remotely? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And one thing I found that was really interesting is with the pandemic, how many businesses, you're right, started online because they, that was sort of the restriction of what was allowed at the time. So a lot of businesses and individuals who perhaps didn't want to work anymore started these businesses online. But what we're starting to see is a lot of these companies, and there's just the smaller companies for the most part, but they are starting to look for brick and mortar places, right? And that's particularly true as we see that resurgence of downtowns. I think, for a while, downtowns were not in certain communities for sure, we're not seen as being the place to be, and we're seeing a big change with that. But you're right, there is definitely a lot of focus on remote working, but there's also a lot of pushback from the companies that do want their employees back, and I think we're still in the waiting game to see which way that's going to actually go. So yeah, we'll definitely see. Some businesses actually had to give up their lease, so they don't have enough room for people to come back remotely, which they were sort of surprised at. And then again, you have, I think it was statistics showed or surveyed showed that 65% of people did not want to come back to the workforce, or at least at minimum wanted a hybrid. But again, I think we're still looking at how that's going to play out.
Yeah, they didn't want to come back to that sort of bricks and mortar. They didn't want to come back to the office and be close to everybody. They wanted to work from home. And then of course some companies themselves are actually pushing back on that. And there's a company in Vancouver that actually decided to open a facility in the Kootenays, which again, I'm not 100% sure that this whole project is finished yet, but they looked in the Kootenay where they could find a cluster of workforce that could do but they're setting up a bricks and mortar. So it's not like it's going to be remote working. It's going to be where there's maybe 15 people working in an office space, but in the Kootenays. So they're shrinking the size of their main facility and sort of reaching out. So this does open up opportunities for smaller rural communities that might, have space available or land available to attract a company like that that's looking at creating sort of a satellite facility for its workforce. But again, if you're attracting, I really think communities need to look at, we're thinking investment. A remote worker is an investor in many ways, where they're coming into the community, they're going to need certain things. And is there in that community the broadband? And maybe there is in, the larger centers, but is there in those smaller centers? Is there the broadband? Is there a facility that they can go to sometimes get away from sort of the hustle and bustle of working out of a home? Be it kids, dogs, whatever. Got one sitting here. Where, do you need to have a location where it's like a co-working space or some other type of temporary facility where people can go in and work? And, maybe it's an opportunity for libraries to open up silent rooms or something like that so that people can have a quiet place to work. There's all those types of things that you need to start considering. It's still investment in your community. It's somebody new coming in. It's new tax revenues. It's new money being spent in the community. So we still need to look at it that way as well. So some of the key points that are in this investment readiness assessment are the, who's the primary point of contact in the community? Do you actually have that on your website? Does it say who to call? It can't just be, or it shouldn't just be a generic phone number. It should be the specific name of the contact person where people can call. Do you have a good land use plan? Are your official community plans up to date? Are you out there engaging with your business community? I think COVID just really highlighted the need to really engage with your business community and don't just focus on a big industry. Don't just focus on an employer of 100 people. There's smaller businesses in your community that are making a dramatic impact. And when we go to communities, smaller communities, they're working with every single business in their community. Medium-sized communities might focus on a geographic area, downtown, or maybe the industrial parks. And same with the larger ones where they'll pick a specific sector that they're going to work with. But we need to find creative ways to engage with our businesses, because every business really does matter if they're employing people, paying taxes, and being a part of contributing to the community overall. what are your information sources? Do you have adequate information sources? It can't, again, just be information on your own community. Land inventory. Do you know where an investor can go? Do you have an inventory of your empty buildings? Do you have an inventory of empty land for development? Do you have joint ventures? Do you encourage joint ventures? Will you work with the private sector to say take large areas of land and redevelop it? You know, those types of ventures that you might get into. Do you have that economic development capacity? Or do you have somebody that can respond to these inquiries? And do you actually have a process for follow-up, for making sure that you know either why, you know, what they might need or why they didn't pick your community over another, so that you can work towards overcoming those issues and challenges? You need to have a community profile and a site selection profile. And really today, those can be integrated. And we've seen so many, you know, great examples yesterday of sort of those statistics, but you still need a community profile. And we'll talk a little bit more about that afterwards. And then a website, and of course, you know, and the communication. Colleen?
Yeah. And then the self-assessment that is available on BCEDA's website. They have a separate one as well that's a self-assessment for Indigenous communities. And that just words questions a little differently. It adds a few more questions that perhaps as non-Indigenous communities we're not dealing with, that sort of thing. So depending on what type of community you are, definitely look at either the non-Indigenous or the Indigenous, or you know, both as well, especially if you're working on a regional basis. I think that would be a great idea.
Yeah, and I think, you know, really with the Indigenous communities too, Colleen, from our experience, we find the Indigenous communities actually do a lot more public engagement. There's a lot more engagement in their process around what it is they're going to pursue, what it is they're going to do. And I mean, I think, you know, one of the best things that we've seen, and when we do our course, we'll take a tour out to the Tawasin First Nations and see the developments that they did on their lands. And you know, they're a treaty nation. They've done an extensive amount of consultation, and they didn't just do the consultation in their community. They did in the boundaries of their community. They did the consultation with their community members that don't live in the community. So they came up to the Okanagan and did consultation. So the process of planning and the process is significantly different in an Indigenous community than it is in a non-Indigenous community, and that sort of gets captured in this in the different the assessment process that they go through. And so again, it's just really important to not just assess, but to act. So you can do this community assessment, you can do this investment readiness assessment, but if you're not acting on it and what you identify and as your weaknesses, as your challenges, then you know, then really why did you bother doing it? You can't look at it as a passive fail, but instead look at it as an opportunity to set out your work plan for future success. Oh, just hang on a sec here. Share sound. This is John Powell for he was economic developer in Tumbler Ridge at one point.
Not able to be there today, but here I am on the recording. So I was the Economic Development Officer for the District of Tumbler Ridge up in Northeast BC, a community of around 2,500 people. When I arrived in 2016, I discovered that the community was lacking a lot of the information that is required in order to be deemed investment ready. When potential investors came to me, I was struggling to produce the data that they were really looking for in a short amount of time. So I set out to put that right. So as a part of the economic development strategy renewal process, I really wanted to focus on becoming investment ready. So with the consultants, I undertook the BCEDA self-assessment questionnaire, and you know, found that yes, we were really underperforming. And so through the process of putting that together, we came up with a lot of different initiatives that we could undertake. Once we'd adopted the strategy, I undertook a number of programs, including collecting the information data to create a community profile. Being 2016, a lot of the information was outdated, and that's one of the struggles that we've always found, is that you know, producing that information is quite tough in small communities. Another initiative that I launched was the development of a relocation guide. This relocation guide was both online and also in print, and it produced a lot of the data that potential investors would be looking at, not just from a business and investment perspective, but also lifestyle, housing, schooling, that kind of thing. Alongside that, I produced a database, an online database of all of the district-owned parcels of land, industrial, commercial, and residential land that we owned. I collected all of the information that relates to that property and put it into one location on this digital platform. This included information about the relevant parts of the official community plan. It included zoning information. It included the price, the appraised price. But you know, I also, as a part of this, collected like technical information, environmental site assessment information, and an overall marketing piece for each of these parcels. And it really did help when I got these investors coming to me saying, here you go, this is all the information that I feel that you will need. And then it makes it much easier once I've given them that, to answer any other additional questions that they might have. Furthermore, I'm just looking down my list of other things that I did. I produced with our consultant actually a one-pager for our key economic sectors. And you know, so tourism, for example, you know, a two-sided piece of paper with all the information pertaining to, you know, why you would do well to invest your tourism business in Tumbler Ridge. And that went through to the mining, that went through to renewable energy, you know, wind energy. Oh yes, and one of the main projects I undertook as well was an update of the website, economic development website. Right now, at that point, the website was integrated into the main municipal website. And it was very important that we were able to communicate directly with the investors or the businesses that we were already working with in the community to relay the information that they are looking for in a direct and personalized manner. So those are some of the main initiatives I undertook as a part of the investment readiness campaign that I undertook. And yeah, if there's anyone that's got any questions, then I could be reached. I think Dale or Colleen will share my information.
Great, thanks, John. Colleen, do you have any questions?
Well, I do. I'm just curious a little bit, you know, I think when you said you got to Tumbler Ridge, you were thinking that, you know, that investment readiness piece wasn't really there yet, and you knew things had to happen. What was the support like from the town itself, from the council? Did they share that, or did they just assume they were ready for investment?
No, they supported the whole initiative. I think they recognized that you know, there were a lot of gaps in the you know, in the information that we had to hand, and the information that we did have was outdated.
Mm-hmm. And so when you got your, you said you did a self-assessment, and then you went further down with consultants to find out, you know, sort of where you were from the point of view of investors. Did you share that information back to the community, or certainly at council table perhaps, to say, you know, this is the number that we're at, or this is kind of where we rank? And if so, I'm assuming then perhaps there was not really a surprise that Tumbler Ridge maybe needed some of these other initiatives built in to improve that investment readiness for you.
I don't recall sharing it with council. That's a little bit of trying to keep council out of the kitchen. Not relaying all of the kind of step-by-step aspects of the work that we're doing, but I don't believe I did share that specifically. I just said yes. With this provincial measurement, we are underperforming, and these are the steps that we will need to take in order to start meeting the requirements.
Yeah. And I guess just my last question, John, is so is there any real results that you're able to share? I know specifically, I think when I saw the one sheets that you did, what I really liked about the one sheets that you did for the specific sectors is you actually listed what you were looking for. So what sort of opportunity actually existed in Tumbler Ridge versus just saying, come here and do business with us. There were specific things you were looking for. So are there any sort of real results that you could share with us from that, or another part of the process you went through?
Yeah, I think the responses from investors was very, very positive. The information I did send out did give them the information they required in order to make a better informed decision as to whether they wanted to invest in Tumbler Ridge. Yes, so we did see some quite positive results coming out of it.
So that was John, and John, in the presentation that'll actually get shared online. The video is a little bit longer, but answers a couple of more questions. John did a phenomenal job in Tumbler Ridge. He's now in Alberta, working for another community, but he really paid close attention to making sure that his community was investment ready. I do encourage anyone to check out their website, and especially the business focused one. I know they have a fantastic new economic developer up there who is working on it. Tumbler Ridge is very fortunate, and they do attract economic developers from, as you could tell, John is from the UK. He was originally in the Okanagan here before doing economic development before he went to Tumbler. And then the latest one is from, I believe, Australia. So but they've done some great things up there. So Colleen, we should move on to what are the investors looking for? So how does an investment come to the community, Colleen?
Yeah, well, quite a few different ways. I think you talked about it very briefly at the very beginning, that these are ways that communities do attract investment. It's putting together that investment plan, that marketing plan or strategy, so that you know who it is that you're targeting, and whether that's geographic or whether that's by sector. It's putting together that plan that really lays out how you are going to market your community, how you are going to market your specific opportunities to investors, and start working on that to fulfill that sort of side of things for investment attraction. We can't talk enough about business retention and expansion. That is definitely a way that investment comes into a community. There's no doubt about that. So whether that's a business community, or sorry, whether that's a business that is looking to expand, or whether it's a business that has suppliers that perhaps are located outside the community that they are interested in working with you to bring into the community. So there's lots of different ways that your existing businesses help with investment into your community. And also one of the key ways is if your existing businesses are happy doing business in the community, that is going to speak to those potential investments coming in. They will see, don't kid yourself that people will come into the community and not talk to existing businesses. And you may not know it, you may know it. Doesn't, whatever it is, they do talk to existing businesses to find out what it's like at the policy level, what it's like with local government, what it's like with customers. Are they loyal? Are they supportive? That sort of thing. So really, really, really take care of your existing businesses, because they will go a long way in your investment attraction efforts. And then there's different private and public partnerships that'll come into play. Site selectors is a different ball of wax for sure. These are individuals or companies that are specifically looking. They're usually US based, but they're specifically looking for 3 or 4 companies for larger investment into communities. That's where you really need to have your information ready and be able to respond in a very quick process time for them. And then the entrepreneurs that are in your community. So this is a really, really important part of investment is to nurture the entrepreneurs that are in your community, to build that entrepreneurship spirit and support for them. And I think we sometimes do a disservice to individuals who want to start up businesses and talk about how difficult it is and how challenging, and you'll be working forever, and here's the statistics on who fails and who doesn't, and instead just let people try. I think that'll go a long way, and different organizations can help you with that, because as we said, as a smaller community, you sort of do it all. But if you can pull in other partners to help you with any of these aspects, that'll really help for getting that investment into the community.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you really talked about that the importance of that, Bree. And that helps whether it's a large investor or just a simple entrepreneur, is to understand the needs of your business, understand the level of happiness. We have run into situations where companies come into the community and said, hey, we want to meet with these businesses. And if you don't know what those businesses are going to be saying, there's great fear that you might never, ever land that project. And I think the other thing to maybe, like on the issue of site selectors, and there used to be a lot of focus on site selectors, and site selectors can be a variety of things. They can be an actual official site selector, which is typically almost like a realtor, and in some cases are realtors, or a site selector can also be working for the company themselves. So they can be a location, person for the company. So if you look at hotel chains, for an example, or even Nestle Waters, or some of those, they have internal companies or internal staff that are actually the location advisors as to where their next facility will be. Typically a site selector, a corporate site selector that is working being hired by a company to do a specific project, and say it's Colliers or some of the other companies that we might have dealt with over the years, Colleen. Those site selectors in majority of the times don't want to look, unfortunately, at rural communities. And that's where it's nice to have the relationship with other economic development offices, with the province of BC, with their investment people, is to make sure that maybe initially they're not interested in rural communities outside of a major center. By working with by letting other economic developers know and other communities know what you're looking for, and what the province know what it is you're looking for, they can direct those people to start looking at those rural communities. But typically their first point won't be to jump into a rural community, unless it's specifically something related to, say, mining or forestry or something like that might be in that specific area. So the top 10 data points that really matter the most is sort of, what is your current employment status? And it was interesting yesterday looking at the statistics where if the community page that the province has available, you can go on that, and there is some statistics in there even for the smaller communities. that do say what the employment rate or unemployment rate is, but it's also very, it depends on the, how the level of accuracy that might be related to those numbers. They're looking at sort of what is those change in jobs in the last 2 years versus the last 10 years. So what are some of those current and past location quotients? What are the current wages? Colleen, I think, is there a community that's actually doing a salary survey? I think you were talking to me about that. Somebody's doing a salary survey.
Yeah, here in the Okanagan, Accelerate Okanagan, they're tech focused, but they are trying to reach out to businesses. They just started, I think, this week, to find out exactly what the salary is right now for individuals in different types of positions in our tech companies and support companies as well with that. And part of it is sort of, because they want to know what existing salary base is here, but also they want to be able to use that data for individuals or new investment coming into the community to say, this is what you can expect as a business to come into the community for pay as well as for resident attraction. So if these are the types of industries you're looking at, here's our typical salary for that.
Yeah, and then of course, the other things that they're looking at, but it really, gets down to, what is your on the ground knowledge of all of this type of information? It's important to know all that. The other tool that I was mentioning was the community information tool that's available from the province of BC. That is available. Again, it can't be your only source of information, and you can only compare two communities. So if you really want to do a regional analysis, you're going to have to do a bit more manipulating of the data within that system to pull together sort of that broader region all at once, especially when it gets outside of the major urban centers. So now we want to talk briefly about marketing. So Colleen.
Yes, sorry, just had a little cough there. So know your competitive advantages. I mean, this is absolutely key for a community. Know what you are good at. And it's not just being able to say, you know what, we have all these incentives that we can offer you. That's really not what a lot of investment is looking for. Yes, there's obviously some that do focus on that, but a lot of them don't. So, look at beyond what those incentives are that we typically think for investment attraction. It's not just going to be your tax rates, it's not just your land costs, and it's not just your community. There's so much more about what your competitive advantages are and how you're going to sell that, how you're going to bundle that up and let people know. And it's really important to know, I don't think we talk about it here, Dale, but when we do market to people, it's important to know that you've got to catch their attention really fast and a short attention span. We're all like that now, and unfortunately, if something goes over a minute long, I'm like, geez, that's way too long. And we have to remember that as communities who are going to market what we're good at, what our advantages are, why people should invest in our community. We really need to make sure that we get to the point really quickly and really well, and very visual as well. Video is coming back more and more and more than ever. People want to see with and feel with their eyes and really understand what your community is about. And I think we've got a good example coming up.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. Communities don't always look at this and they go, okay, the first thing they'll say is, well, we can't offer incentives. Well, there are a couple of things that communities can do. Maybe it's something around the development cost charges, or maybe it's something to do with a revitalization zone. Chilliwack used that very effectively. A number of Penticton, a number of communities, Logan Lake, I believe. Communities have used that very effectively to encourage new types of investment in the community. But there's also the incentives that, hand-holding and the types of assistance, the fast track of approvals, those types of things that are incentives. Your tax rates, it isn't just There's the provincial tax rates, there's the federal tax rates. Those are the things you're going to have information on. And maybe I know that that's a competitive advantage for every community, but it's a reality, and it's something that you don't want them having to go to other places to find information. So again, that tax rate or whatever that's been put in place, or the R&D tax credits, which are some of the best in the world in Canada and British Columbia, you know what those are, and talk about those in your packages, that those are available. And again, our land costs, and we could argue that they're expensive, but they are. But it's not the only issue.
In a place that's so relaxing, it's impressive to see how much gets done. This is Kelowna and the Central Okanagan. Home to innovators, entrepreneurs, creators, and connoisseurs. This is the place to work and play. The Central Okanagan. We're ready. Are you set?
Excellent video, Colleen, in the sense that it identifies their key sectors, their key priorities. It shows people, it shows the scenery, it shows land, it shows buildings, shows workers, and it's 30 seconds. It's able to keep the attention of the person that's watching it. It's not long, it's not 5 minutes, it's not 3 minutes. It doesn't just have some economic developer talking, or a council member talking. It's telling some facts about the community, and basically it becomes a call to action. Here you go, here's where you can go find more information. Anything else on that?
Yeah, and it teases you to want to find more information. And part of this whole promotional, not this video, but the promotional idea here too, was they allowed the local businesses to be able to use this type of marketing, their print marketing that went along with it. And the local businesses could put their own logo on it as if it was their marketing materials, which I think is a great idea. So they use that, the local businesses would use that for the attraction of new workers, etc. So this one, yeah, I really, you really have to tell your story of what your community is. Statistics are great to a certain point, but again, as I said, we need to understand and feel what a community is really offering us. And so, we always say, tell your story, especially when we're talking about when you develop your community profile, but also on your website, it's a good idea to have these visuals for sure, to let people know sort of, what you're looking for as a community, both short and long term, but also, what it is about your community that entices them to come there. So, it's just not an advertisement of a land site or a building that's available. And Tumbler Ridge, we just kept with Tumbler Ridge because we had John on, and this was that's their cover page for their community. So there definitely was, or is, statistics in there, but it really told the story with visuals and testimonials. When you're doing your community profile or your website, we would definitely encourage you to put on testimonials from your existing businesses about why it's so great, not only to do business in there, to invest in the community, to live there, all of those sort of things. Those stories go an awful long way, and I can guarantee you will find a lot of people who are more than willing to talk about the good things that your community has to offer, and I definitely would get those into your profile and your website.
Yeah, and I think that's a good comment, Colleen. The issue too of sort of integrating the telling the story through the community profile and the website, but also video. And Tumbler Ridge, or not Tumbler Ridge, but Powell River did a good job of those videos too. And their target was healthcare workers or younger people, and they used testimonials from people, as you mentioned, testimonials. They did video testimonials of these people after they've moved to the community, why they selected the Powell River, and what they like about it, and what it is they're doing. So I think there's good ways to tell your story, and it shouldn't just be one thing. It should be it should be a variety of different things to be able to do that. And the other way to tell your story, and these are if you're a smaller community versus a larger center, there's those things that you should be doing in a smaller community, your basics, your community profile, a website, using social media. If you're using social media, remember which ones are actually effective from an economic development perspective. Facebook's good for sort of those community type, maybe supporting local, shop local, and those types of things. From an investment perspective, not so much. Twitter, really, it's a real point in time type of a hit. If they see it, they see it. If they don't, they don't. It's gone on to something else very quickly. But LinkedIn is probably your best one to communicate with businesses and industry that you may want to attract to your community. So from a social media perspective, be using LinkedIn to attract investment. Earned media, we always go back to this story that to me was the greatest testimonial that Invermere could ever get for the success of investing in that community. Was this story in the Globe and Mail, read by people across Canada, about why this company picked Invermere and is looking for investors and will be staying in Invermere no matter what. And as part of that requirement, to bring investors into the company, they were saying that if you wanted to invest, we are staying in this community. And because they liked it, they felt the community was a great place to be. And that kind of media is earned media, and it doesn't cost you anything. Issuing a press release, maybe it won't get picked up, but maybe it will. Telling a story about a local company's success and issuing a press release to Business in Vancouver, Globe and Mail, all the different media outlets may get that story run, giving you some free earned media rather than spending money on marketing that may or may not reach the people you're wanting to reach. Newsletters, keeping your audience informed, relationships, building relationships with provincial, federal employees, regional employees, whether it's regional managers from the Ministry of Jobs and Economic Recovery and Innovation. You need to have those relationships. It's important to have that. Again, earned media, email, and then of course video. Those are sort of the musts for a smaller community. Now, they're nice to have that you don't really have to have as a smaller community, but should be doing as a larger community. Those trade missions and trade shows, they're starting to come back now. Hosting programs, bringing people into the community and hosting them and showing them what you have, national advertising, printed promotional materials, maybe hiring a PR firm, and then of course, direct mail. Direct mail's not used that much anymore. And even site selectors and even corporate executives will actually tell you that direct mail, it's actually sort of leveled out now, but the majority of the direct mail that will come into an office typically will just go into the garbage, and most people won't look at it. Whereas they'll look at something that's a quick call to action to visit somebody's website, so that they can find out the key information that they might be interested in. Anything else to add to this stuff, Colleen?
No, I think that's good. The only thing I would say probably is the trade missions and the trade shows is some of these things are hosting programs and events. Even though you're a small community, I think if you partner with surrounding communities and make it more regional, those are doable for you. We certainly had a lot of success in the Central Okanagan by partnering with our surrounding regions, so up through to Vernon and down through to Osoyoos, and we, as well as jumping on board when the province was going to go somewhere as a trade show, or when the federal government was going somewhere as a trade show or trade mission. We would definitely have those relationships and then be able to partner with them and do things that we wouldn't normally be able to do just because of capacity or budget.
Yeah, so true. And I know that, and when we think of trade missions and trade shows, that doesn't mean that we have to fly all over the world to attend these things. maybe you will, but the simple ones, even like I know like Tumbler Ridge used to do, Colleen, and I think other communities in the north have done this, has gone to like the outdoor show and gone to other types of, and using sort of tourism events in many ways to the advantage of promoting the community as a place to live, as a place to invest, maybe to open a small tourism type venture. Again, so there are ways to do it, but I think it's just spending the money on the big ones. And I think partnerships, you're right, with the province are really good to around that, because they're at those events. So we thought it would be good for all of you not to, this isn't something that we're asking you to send in to us or anything like that, but it would be good for you to download the manual, the investment readiness manual that's available on the site now. It's been freshly done and available for you to download. It has the investment readiness assessment tool in there for both local governments and Indigenous communities. Both sheets are in there for you to actually complete the assessment and see where you are. And it doesn't just have to be the EDO. It can be others that actually that are part of it as well. So yeah, and anything else on that, Colleen, before we close off today's webinar?
No, I think that's good to hear. I just like the comment that Therese just put in there about somebody connecting with them 2 years ago at the adventure show in Vancouver, and then said that's why they bought a house up in a TR, I'm assuming that's Tumbler Ridge still, right? But they attribute that show. And that's the thing with economic development, right? Is, sometimes our councils or boards want to see things immediately, but it's a long-term gain. And that's a perfect example, right? Is 2 years ago, you talked to them and there they are. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, and Therese now I've lost her to Jess and Jesse are both on the line from Tumbler Ridge, and I know, Jesse, you've been there longer than Therese has, and I'm glad to have you on here, Therese. I almost embarrassed that I didn't realize you were on the call, and but I love the shout outs there for Jesse, so that's fantastic, and that's a great story about that, and I think it says a lot. How one thing that we don't actually mention in the presentation because of the time, but economic development takes time, and there's 2 years that they saw something 2 years ago, and now they've just purchased a house. We've both worked with investments, with potential investments to come in our community. Sometimes it can happen really quickly, and sometimes it can just take years and years before it comes to fruition. And you have to be patient with all of that stuff. So great comment. Thanks for bringing it up, Therese. So yes, so here's again, this is all of the workshops. Colleen and I will be back here again tomorrow for I believe it's the ECDEP for local leaders tomorrow, and then again Friday for disaster recovery, and then next week we have Allison doing economic development ethics. We have Laith Wardy doing business retention and expansion, and we have Allison and Brian Coombs doing neighborhood development. So hopefully you'll all be able to join us next week as well as this week for them. For today's session, this is where you can talk to John more, and maybe Therese, if you want to share your email address in the chat, or Jesse, if people want to email Tumbler Ridge for more information on some of the things that they've done, then please feel free to send them as well. And thanks, everybody. We look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow or another time. Thanks.
Thank you.